Good morning and welcome to day 4 of studying Job. Very glad that you're here. Again, one person from the Bible that we study each week. We look at how he did or did not fulfill the scout law. This week 2, and we're looking at Job. We've heard all kinds of things about Job. A reminder though, and I will remind you every day, please interact with the video. That way I know you've been here and that I can get you a patch by the end of the summer. Please, we want to be able to do that. Okay? So, day 4. We heard yesterday about Eliphaz the Temanite. I think we learned that what he said wasn't really very helpful. He was blaming Job. He was blaming God. How about we move on to another friend of his? We're going to listen to Bildad the Shuhite and see what he has to say. Maybe it's something a little different. This is Job 8. Then Bildad the Shuhite replied, "How long will you say such things? Your words are a blustering wind. Does God pervert justice? Does the Almighty pervert what is right? When your children sinned against him, he gave them over to the penalty of their sin." Well, I guess he does have something a little different to say, sort of, but he's still blaming Job. I'm going to put Bildad's words in a different way for you. Basically, he is saying this: you know what, Job, if you'd done a better job raising your kids, then they wouldn't have sinned and God wouldn't have struck them down. Man, he's not exactly heaping the support on Job. If you do something wrong, whose fault is it? Is it yours? Or do you blame your parents? While parenting can and should have an influence on how we behave, we do all make our own choices. To tell Job that his kids died because he didn't do a good job raising them is truly horrible. No parent ever wants to hear that. Right? And it's incorrect. So what does Job say in response to Bildad? Bildad doesn't just say that. He goes on just for one chapter. So Job 9. "How then can I dispute with him? How can I find words to argue with him? Though I were innocent, I could not answer him. I could only plead with my judge for mercy. Even if I summoned him and he responded, I do not believe he would give me a hearing. He would crush me with a storm and multiply my wounds for no reason. He would not let me catch my breath, but would overwhelm me with misery. If it is a matter of strength, he is mighty, and if it is a matter of justice, who can challenge him? If I were innocent, my mouth would condemn me. If I were blameless, it would pronounce me guilty. He is not a mere mortal like me that I might answer him, that we might confront each other in court. If only there were someone to mediate between us, someone to bring us together, someone to remove God's rod from me so that his terror would frighten me no more. Then I would speak up without fear of him, but as it now stands with me, I cannot." Job is making sure that his friends know that he knows who is God and who is not. Job knows that he's not God, and he recognizes God's omnipotent power. And then he wonders who could mediate between himself and God. I could just imagine his friends looking anywhere except at Job when he talked about that. Job knows that his friends can't mediate between him and God because they're not at God's level either. So let's look at what Zophar the Naamathite says. Then Zophar replies, My troubled thoughts prompt me to answer because I am greatly disturbed. I hear a rebuke that dishonors me, and my understanding inspires me to reply. Surely you know how it has been from of old, ever since mankind was placed on the earth, that the mirth of the wicked is brief, the joy of the godless lasts but a moment. The heavens will expose his guilt, the earth will rise up against him. A flood will carry off his house, rushing waters on the day of God's wrath. Such is the fate God allots the wicked, the heritage appointed for them by God. Man, Zophar's no better than his friends. He's telling Job that no matter how much Job protests, he must have done something bad because bad things only happen to bad people. We've talked about this already. Is that true? No, it's not. We live in a fallen world and bad things happen to everyone. Good things happen to everyone. But Job's friends are only focusing on the bad. Job's response: "Listen carefully to my words. Let this be the consolation you give me. Bear with me while I speak, and after I have spoken, mock on. Why do the wicked live on, growing old and increasing in power? They see their children established around them, their offspring before their eyes. Their homes are safe and free from fear. The rod of God is not on them. Yet they say to God, leave us alone. We have no desire to know your ways. Who is the Almighty that we should serve him? What would we gain by praying to him? But their prosperity is not in their own hands, so I stand aloof from the plans of the wicked." In other words, he's asking his friends to look around and see the world as it is. There are evil people who prosper and want nothing to do with God. Since that's true, how can their words be true? being defined as evil or good by the world makes no difference to God. God sees the heart, and God knows, and God is not random. God listens to everyone. He gives blessings to everyone. What we do with those blessings is up to us. Job ends this chapter with some interesting words for his friends. So how can you console me with your nonsense? Nothing is left of your answers but falsehood. In other words, stop lying. I wanted comfort, and you've made me feel worse, so I'm done talking to you. So Job is done talking to his friends, but they're not done talking to him. They keep talking for 15 more chapters. I'm not going to read them all to you now. Please feel free to read all those 15 chapters and the rest of Job as well, but I am going to go on. So who speaks next? Then the Lord spoke to Job out of the storm. He said, "Who is this that obscures my plans with words without knowledge? Brace yourself like a man. I will question you, and you shall answer me. Where were you when I laid the earth's foundation? Tell me if you understand. Who marked off its dimensions? Surely you know. Who stretched a measuring line across it? On what were its footings set, or who laid its cornerstone? While the morning stars sang together, and all the angels shouted for joy. Who shut up the sea behind the doors when it burst forth from the womb? When I made the clouds its garment and wrapped it in thick darkness? When I fixed limits for it and set its doors and bars in place? When I said, this far you may come and no farther, here is where your proud waves halt? Have you ever given orders to the morning or shown the dawn its place, that it might take the earth by the edges and shake the wicked out of it? The earth takes shape like clay under a seal. Its features stand out like those of a garment. The wicked are denied their light, and their upraised arm is broken. Have you ever journeyed to the springs of the sea, or walked in the recesses of the deep? Have the gates of death been shown to you? Have you seen the gates of the deepest darkness? Have you comprehended the vast expanses of the earth? Tell me if you know all this." Wow, God speaks. And when God speaks, hopefully we listen. God's questions are good. I think we'd expect that. And I don't believe God's slapping Job down. I believe God is giving Job much to think about. Job had a lot. Job was rich. As a result, he was powerful, but he was powerful as far as any man can be powerful. Job was not and is not God. None of us are. God is God. Do you think God still gives answers today? Has God ever spoken to you? If he has, tell me in the chat. I'm going to tell you a story about when God spoke to me. When I was a missionary, which I was for 26 years with a Christian theater company, we were driving across the country. We did that a lot. There were 6 of us in the van, and we were driving through the night. It was winter. It was January. We were driving somewhere in Iowa. Everyone else in the van was asleep except me. I happened to be thinking about a worship service that I had just seen, where a good friend of mine had done a worship dance. I was in awe of how that dance drew me into the presence of the Lord, and how when she danced, she seemed to not be dancing alone, even though she was the only person up there. But all of a sudden, I heard the Lord say the words to me, "Dance for me." I think I actually chuckled. I do dance, but I'm not a dancer, if that makes sense to you. I know some steps, but I'm certainly not a dancer. Certainly not like my friend, and certainly not like my wife. My wife's a worship dancer as well, so I told the Lord that he should go wake Sharon up, because if he wanted somebody to dance, she'd do it for him. Thankfully, God's patient, and he repeated himself. Dance for me. I had a conversation with him that turned into a song. In Sunday worship, you will hear that song. God still speaks. We can question God. We can wonder at what God's doing. Through it all, we need to remember that God truly is all-powerful, all-seeing, all-knowing. I mean, I barely know what's happening with me, never mind everyone else. But when you ask, be ready, because God will answer. It may not be the spoken word or written down. By the way, there are 4 chapters of questions from God, but God's going to answer. God asking Job questions is, I believe, the most gentle way to get Job to think. God could have said, "You're off base, Job, knock it off," or "I'm done with you." God could have said and done many things. Instead, for 4 chapters, God asks questions. Right at the beginning of chapter 40, there are 2 sentences from Job. Job answered, "I'm speechless, in awe, words fail me. I should never have opened my mouth. I've talked too much, way too much. I'm ready to shut up and listen." I'm ready to shut up and listen. We need to get to that point so we can hear what God's saying to us. We need to stop. We need to not only stop moving, we need to stop talking, and we need to listen. Wait for the response and words that God has for us. If it had been noisy in the van and people talking, I wouldn't have been able to hear the Lord. I was in the perfect spot to be able to hear and respond. So as we come to the end of the week, which will be tomorrow, keep asking your questions. But remember, when you ask God questions, to stop and listen, because you might be surprised by what you hear. So how's Job doing fulfilling the scout law? Remember to put your response in there, in the chat, so that I can see it, and I know that you've been here. Please keep sending in your prayer requests, and we're going to close with a word of prayer. Lord, once again, I'm grateful. I'm grateful that you speak. You still speak. You speak through creation. You speak through your word. You speak through people. But I ask that you would give us discerning hearts and minds to be able to truly hear what you're saying. Lord, I ask that you bless each of us, that you focus each of us into your word. I thank you for the opportunity to study Job. Lord, I ask that as we continue to open up states, that you bless that process, that you protect people, that you be with each of us as we go through the steps. Lord, I thank you for whatever we have learned or not learned during quarantine. If it was a time for us to be quiet and silent, that you bless that. If it was a time for us to be learning new things, Lord, I know you bless that. But whatever the situation was, Lord, I ask that you would bless it and you would help us to move forward. I ask truly that you bring us back together physically, but I thank you for the Yahoo Network and allowing us to be able to come together. Lord, I ask that you bless those directly affected by COVID-19, for those who are working in hospitals at whatever level, Lord, that you bless and protect them. Lord, that you bless all those others who work behind the scenes. Lord, those in prisons and those in nursing homes, Father, for those essential workers who are in grocery stores. Father, for the post office that continues to deliver mail and has through this entire time. But Lord, I also thank you for the technology that allows us to stay in touch and allows us to be able to have the Yahoo Network. Lord, I ask that you bless our military, that you keep them safe, that you protect them, especially those who are deployed overseas. Lord, you bring them back safely. And Lord, that you be with our elected and appointed officials, Lord, that you send people into their path truly that they can hear your word. Lord, that we want to be governed by a unified people, a people that can give us an example of how people can truly work together. Lord, I just ask that you bless it. You bless each of us and you draw us closer to you and bring us back together safely, Lord. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, that's day 4, and we'll see you tomorrow for day 5.